That's a really good source. All right, I guess we're hitting the time, so I guess we got to get the show on the road, right? All right, let me
Sure.
quick promotion. All right, and we ready to go. All right, so I'm gonna start the recording. So if y'all want to get yourselves dolled up or something, I'll give you guys.
Don't kill me.
Yeah.
Dog, dog.
All right, bet we can record now. All right, welcome to the Paradox 12 podcast. My name is Sam Como, and these are my guests. You guys can name yourselves in order. Who we gonna start with?
Okay, I'll go first. My name is Jamar Kennedy, and yep, who's next?
I'm Ashley Uzande.
Moses.
Mamita? No, I'm Gummer.
All right, there we go. And this is who we're starting with right now. We're gonna have a couple people rolling in as we're recording this. So, yeah, gang. And today we're gonna talk about a very, very polarizing topic. That topic is, can Black people be racist? So before we begin, I'm just need to set up a couple of rules just for everybody who's on here, in case you didn't know. Um, when each of us are talking. So I'll essentially pick whoever talks or whatever at a time. All you gotta do is raise your hand, like on there's like a raise hand icon on the side. Do you guys know how to get to that?
Yeah, I got it.
So if you click reactions, if you just press,
Oh, yeah.
you got that?
Mhm.
All right, so you're just gonna raise your hand, and then I'll give you the platform, and then everyone else will just mute their mics, right? And so that we can get like people to talk, like once the time so the audio is clear, you know. Uh, and yeah, just make sure we give everybody enough time to say their point, this, that, and the third, you know. So yeah, um,
Oh yeah.
let's get into some first thoughts when we think about this topic, like um what are things that come to mind when you think about racism as it pertains to Black people or white people, Asian people? Because also the world is not only black and white. There's people of all different races and colors and creeds. So it's also important to bring light to that there's like way more perspectives than even in this room, right? Or room. You know what I mean? But yeah, what comes to mind? I guess I'll start with Jamar since you're the first one to introduce yourself.
Okay. So my opinion on this topic is that, well, Black people can be racist. They can be racist. They can, but it's not normalized in our, let's just say, society of Black people being racist to each, like, to, like, as one, like black on black or black and white or black and different cultures. But yeah, I don't really see you know Black people being racist at the same time, because I don't know, I just don't see it now in society. I don't know.
All right, so that's one side of it. Does anyone else have another view on that? All right, we got Mo. All right, Mo, you can hop.
All right, so I definitely say that Black people can be racist. I feel like the argument a lot of the times is that racism is systemic, but racism on a day-to-day basis, like just people interacting with each other, happens all the time, regardless of race, regardless of black or white. Because as you said, there's a vast there's a vast there's a vast, let's say, palette of racism of races, So it can't be like an Indian person can't be racist to a Pakistani person. Like, that's not how it works. Racism is racism. Bottom line, it comes in different forms, but of course, black people can be racist, you know. So
All right. All right. So we just gonna move on to Gamar. Are you going? What's your take on that?
Um, so kind of like what they said, and also I think that any race, like, as long as you're human, you can be racist and you can be discriminatory. But I think that when it comes to racism and like where we are in society, there's so much more like levels to it than like what we think. And when you think of racism, the first thing that comes to your mind is like white people being racist to black people. And that type of racism is so much different than like black being racist to anything else, or anything else being racist to black people, anybody else being racist to black people. Like, it's so much, there's so many levels to it. And like, I kind of think of it as like the bully and the bullied. So when it comes to like, let's just, as always, stick to like black and white, because it's just easier to make examples. When a white person is being racist towards a black person, there's so much more like depth and history that goes into it, and that makes it systemic. That makes it like so much deeper than just like what you think racism is. When it comes to like, you can say that a black person is being racist to a white person, that's completely different, because there isn't history and years of like oppression and stuff like to back it up. And it's almost like the white is the bully and the black is the bullied, and like whatever they're saying back, whatever like names or whatever people say about, oh, like white people are this, it's kind of like retaliation rather than like something like, I'm just like picky with my words, but like, I hope that makes sense. Like, it's like a bully and the bullied. If that makes sense.
Right. Um. So just before we move on, I just want to gather a couple points because I feel like I don't want to make people like their views get lost in the abyss of people. By the way, welcome to everybody who just rolled in. Yeah, you guys know the deal. But yeah, main points that I noted is, we've taken into account, the history of, um, you know relations between black and white people, as far as I figure how it's so much deeply entrenched, into, like, even just within our own families. Like, we all have examples of, even personal examples of instances where we've had negative exchange between white and black, or black and white. You know what I mean? And that's a history that stems generations back, and that is also a big reason why I wanted to have this discussion, um, because I feel like we've always kind of, poked the bear, but we've never actually taken it for what it is. We've never actually taken a holistic view of what exactly, you know racism is, and what how does it affect, each and every one of us in our everyday lives. And the fact of the matter is, racism affects everybody. It's a disease that affects everybody. It affects white people, it affects Asian people, it affects Hispanic people. And I guess I'm dwelling into my own view too, right? I kind of feel like it's something that we as black people, you know, we tend to be comfortable with talking about it naturally, because we kind of have to. It's almost like a survival instinct of sorts, like you want to make things better for, maybe your kids in the future, because you don't want this to keep on going. But at the same time, there's also, like, I wouldn't say a victim mentality, but sometimes there's a kind of negative mentality that gets attached to that. Sometimes we become the aggressors by being too, emotional and not understanding the other's viewpoints, right? So the main idea of this was to kind of bring a more, again, holistic view from all sides of the spectrum. But yeah, does anyone have any notes to add on to the train that we were going on just now?
Yo,
Good.
okay. So, racism, when we look at racism, it's a form of hate, right? Anyone, anywhere can develop hate in them if they're already met with hate or bad comings in their life. And I don't really think, like, white, black, Asian, like Muslim, anyone can be hateful, like And especially if you only have, like one kind of experience with a certain race or a certain group of people, and it's a bad experience, you're always going to be like, oh, that person's like that. This group of people is like this. But I think racism too, yeah, it's hate, but also it's like categorizing someone a certain way based on their race. So it isn't always hateful, Like I could look at Sam and be like, oh, he's black. He must love to dance. Technically, it's still racist. I'm stereotyping you, but it's not as hateful as like it always is. Like, it's not always at the extreme of like being hateful. Sometimes it's just like little microaggressions.
All right. I see Ashley has her hand raised over here, so let's give Ashley a little platform right here.
Yeah, so basically like what like you guys just mentioned, I feel like it's like such a like there's like a misconception that, like racism only goes like one way, like white to black, you know what I mean? But there's like everyone can be racist. Like Carly just said, like everyone can develop that hate for a certain community or like different groups of people. Like black people can be racist towards like Asian people. Yes, white people can be racist to black people. Black people can be racist to white people too. And it's just like it's not just a one-way thing. I think everyone can be racist. That's it.
Yo, Ashley,
Yeah.
on that, like, I think we have that perspective of black and white because we're so westernized, like we live in North America, and because of our society, we kind of always are like racism, black and white, racism, white supremacy versus the Black Panthers. Like, it's always that. But I think people fail to see that this is like a global thing that happens everywhere,
It
like
is. Yeah. See, like even like here, exactly what you just said. It's like it's a westernized concept because if we go back to Africa or like where we come from, if you're like a white person in our country, people will like make jokes at you. You know what I mean? It's kind of reversed in a way because we're the majority group. Like there's more black people than white people. So it is a westernized concept. And in different countries too, it's like reverse, if that makes sense. So yeah, everyone can be racist.
Headass though. And like I do I'm learning Japanese. So I've been doing like a lot of like research shit about Japan and the society, the culture. And even there, like westernized people, there's this weird idea of like a white ideal. A lot of the time in advertising, especially underwear advertising, they use white models to advertise instead of Japanese people. People bleach their skin, people they want to have bigger, rounder eyes, double eyelids. But at the same time, there's this kind of like white ideal, but then under that too, like there are people who will go there for school and get bullied because they're white. And I think that kind of is the same thing as Africa too, because you mentioned that how like kids will get picked on because they're different. But in Africa too, we do see this like white ideal and people bleaching their skin, and it's just confusing. Like, how do both exist in the same society?
Yeah, and that also stems into colonization too, and like the reason why certain the reason why, like, let's say if you're like white in a predominantly black country in Africa, it's like a colonization. It's a bigger story than it is. Like, it stems deeper from just, if that makes sense. I don't know how to put it into words, but
Yeah. I hate to cut you guys off for a second, but we got two hands up right now. So I'm gonna begin with Devin. Devin, introduce yourself before you begin, and that goes for everybody else who just came in, just so that everyone's familiar with who's talking. But yeah, go for it.
Okay, hi guys, I'm Devin. I know most of you guys, but I was the one that was in the live on Instagram the other day with Sam as well. I'm currently going to Brock. I'm switching into a sociology major, and then I'm doing medical sciences as well. So yeah, that's just some background. What I was gonna say is kind of related to what Carly and Ashley were talking about, is just like the comparison between like black and white. I talked about this a lot in my sociology class, especially, and I kind of just realized that a common westernized association with black versus white is that white is like the good and black is like the bad, where we think about like white as like pure and like of power, whereas black is more like of that evil or negative. And I feel like that's a really unfair perspective for a westernized culture to develop, because the thing is that white and black shouldn't have some sort of definition or like symbol or some sort of attachment along with the color, because color is just color. It's just melanin. That's all it is. There's no actual division between races unless you make there be.
All right.
And then sorry. And then on top of that, I was just gonna add as well, with what Ashley said about the differences between being like kind of that outsider, I guess, like whether you're black in a white dominated society or white in a black dominated society. Like, I obviously can't explain the experience of being black because I'm not black. So I don't understand what it's like to be a black person in a white dominated society, but I do understand the opposite because of going to Africa. I understand that feeling of like uncertainty and not knowing whether or not you do fit in, and being that person that's like not really in with it. Like, you don't know where you fit in, you don't know how to fit in properly. But I guess like the way that you learn to fit in is through socialization. But then again, that's not always readily available for everybody, because not everybody's provided with that same opportunity or the same kind of like starting ground to fit in. I know of a lot of people who have came to Canada because of being refugees and because of coming out of like very difficult situations back in their home countries. And I wouldn't say that it's fair to say those people are on fair playing grounds, because they didn't come from where we came from here. And not everybody who has immigrated to Canada even starts on the same playing grounds. So I guess you could say that there's a whole balance about like, you know, where we come from, what kind of oppression we all face as people, and what shapes us into who we are as individuals. It really comes down to an individual basis and like where your experiences have led you in life, I guess.
Right. And I'm sure Gamma has another view on that. Got a hand up for the longest, so.
I wanted to go back to what they were saying before about Africa. That's like the point that I wanted to bring up when I was thinking about this whole thing, is that it's very different when we talk about racism. We always think about the Western. When we talk about anything, we always think about Western, like Canada, America, mostly America, and like things are almost completely different in Africa. And I know that like from my experience, like my parents both being from Tanzania, which is in East Africa. Tanzania, most of East Africa is very diverse, and there's a big mix of people. So there's a whole lot of like racism from like so many different angles towards different people, right? So in that itself, like you have different like setups as America. So like I think, in my opinion, I think that like for Tanzania, I think that the white people of Tanzania are like the Arabs, and then there's the Africans, and then there's the Indians. And it's like the Arabs are hating on the Africans but profiting off of their land, and then the Africans are hating on the Indians, and it's just like a vicious cycle of back and forth. And it's like funny because you think about like it just like straight up when you look at it, it's like they're all on like African land, and like there's all of this like hatred towards like the people of that land. And like it's just funny to see how like you can literally see what you're receiving from this group of people, and then you kind of deflect that off of it into another group of people. And like it's just like how is it not clicking? I don't know. It's just I guess that's humans, but it's just funny to think about like all the different types of people there and like how people treat each other, and it's just like what's not clicking. Yeah.
Keep the conversation moving. I'd actually like to ask an additional question on top of this one. So, you know, we're all very young people in this group, right? And you know, the things that we're experiencing is nothing new. Like, it's just being documented differently, and you know, there's nothing. You know, when they say there's nothing new under the sun, that's a fact. You know, uh, but my question to you guys is, what is the main thing as far as race relations that has not been addressed in the past and has not been given light to? And this comes from all angles, whether you're from the east, west, south, doesn't matter. What is something that past generations have failed to address and failed to really have a conversation about?
Well, for me, it's the N word. It's the N word.
Also,
You know, personally, I'd probably say there's a lot of racism within races themselves. So like a lot of self-hate for each other. And me being like, I'm not full black, I'm mixed, but being black, I've seen it mostly with black people just in my experience. Like, it's just the hate that like black people would be like, oh, look at these niggas here type shit. You know what I mean? It's like, there's certain groups of black people that can't have or like certain things that are outside of the culture or considered outside of the culture without other black people taking away their blackness. And it happens in other cultures as well. So like I've seen it with like I have Muslim family members where they'll do something that's I guess outside of the culture and then or considered outside of the culture and then they just get like ridiculed for it. And again, I don't know how other cultures work, and I'm just speaking on the black side of it, you know. So I'd say like for when it comes to racism, it's just like the self-hate for that a lot of races have for each other.
right. Just before we address that, Jamar, you said the N word was something that hasn't been addressed. So my question,
Yeah,
in what way? Like how so?
just the wrong race using it towards us. Even with the ER, using it as a joke. You know what I'm saying? I feel like it's just like no one's taking it in like it's a history thing where you're not supposed to be saying it, but I feel like people just say it because oh we're cool. My one of my friends is black, or I heard it in a song, so it's like I have the right way to say it, you know. And it's like you have to, you know, take a step back and learn and realize like that word is a history thing, and it's very disrespectful for you to use it towards, you know, black culture. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like it's just the N word in general.
Okay. I know I'm putting a little bit too much weight into this, but I kind of think we need to kind of work into this part because I think this, I don't know if y'all agree, but the N word is a very, very interesting topic, at least to me, just because, this is a word that was used to oppress people over and over again. Um, and, this is also a word that has been used in, I guess, popular media now
Mhm.
by us for us though. That's the thing. But because and this is not me bragging and saying, but if you look at popular media, black people have been pushing culture for time. I mean, you can look at jazz, you can look at rock and roll, you can look at hip hop. The facts stand. Or even just in TV and just being like a personality, even in comedy, like black people have pushed culture throughout media, and because of that, and this is mainly for American black people because with African people, the context is a little bit different. And you'll notice in Africa, the N word is not used as much. And
Mhm.
it's also not used in the same context. In fact, the way black people in Africa, and I don't want African people to kill me right now, but I'll be honest, the way we use it sometimes is very akin to the way white people may use it. You know what I mean? Because of the influence, because of the exchange of influence. But it's more acceptable for us because we have that shared experience, but it's not justified. So there's
Yeah.
with the N word, there's always some gray area, and there's always like room for things to go wrong. But okay, I'm gonna leave this right there and let you guys go to town with that because if I stay on this, we could talk for hours. So who do we start with? Dang, there's a lot of
Can I add something? It's like on the tip of my tongue. Okay, as a white person, I obviously will never say that it can be justified to say the word. But here's how I think about it. If I were to put myself in the shoes of a black person, I would think that word has been used to oppress me that word has been used to dehumanize me, to make me feel like I am nothing, and to make me feel like I am lesser than. So if I were to be a Black person in that position, I would personally feel like, you know what? If Black people as one population have taken that meaning and taken that derogatory and negative meaning away from it, I feel like it should be acceptable for them to say it if they were to choose so. Because if I were to be in the shoes of a Black person, if that's what I needed to help in order to heal and to take away from that hurtful meaning, because think about it, if it wasn't starting to be used like within the cotton fields and those things by other Black people, and then proceeding to be brought into society using a different meaning, I feel like it would still carry on in a derogatory way. And I feel like that's really unfair and really hurtful. And I feel like by taking away that derogatory meaning and using it in just like everyday context has almost been a way of like taking away from that hurt and that pain that has been attached to that word. And as a white person, I would say that white people should never say it. It's not acceptable. I would never say that. I just wouldn't, because I feel like that's something that's not my place to say it. Like my kind of people, my color of people were the ones that applied that name in such a rude way and in such a hurtful, like, I don't even know how to describe that word and how it was originally used. But it's just something that you can't really excuse and like expect people to just get over as a whole population. Like Black people make up a really big population of the world. And I don't think it's fair for us as white people to tell Black people how to use the word. If Black people want to use it within their own conversations, and if they want to apply it into the rap industry, if they want to apply it in whatever way they want, let them do it. Let them use the word how they feel is acceptable and how they feel they should use it. Because at least if nothing else, they're taking that and they're rising up and they're showing their power and how they can take away from that hurtful and dehumanizing meaning. But at the end of the day, a white person should never be using that word. No circumstances, period. I don't think you should use it in songs. I don't think you should use it in jokes with your Black friends. I don't care. I just think it is unacceptable for the white population who gave that name the meaning, the true, like, deep meaning that it was initially used for. I don't think there's any excuse. And as a white person, if I see other white people say it, I don't tolerate it. I don't think that's right. And I hurt for people who have to stand up against that because I don't think it's fair.
Right. I'm gonna move the conversation on to Gamar because she's had her hand up for quite some time. Then from there we'll go to Carly, and then we'll see whoever wants to talk next. You're on mute.
You're on mute still.
Tech is not my thing. I didn't even know my hand was up, but I did have some thoughts. Back to like what you were saying, Sam, about like Africa's take on the N-word. And like obviously like it, like what I've noticed like is like it kind of like they get it from like hip hop when like the youth use it there. It's like from hip hop. And it's like a battle of like the younger people trying to fit into like the African American or Black American mold of a Black person. And then you have like the older generation that are like still fighting to like not be Black, and they're like so like in denial about their identity, especially like when you go into like kind of like the where it's like mostly majority Black people, like you don't have that much of an issue with it. But when you go into like the cities, that's where like people start to mix, and it's like an identity crisis almost. So, like the older generations are still fighting to like, oh no, I'm not Black, I'm mixed with this, or I'm coming from this like family, so like I'm not Black or whatever. And it's like, you are, embrace it. But it's like it's so like hard to like hurtful to like see that. It's like it's so sad. Like you have like a younger generation, like Black or not Black, fighting to like be part of the Black culture, and then you have like this older generation that's still like fighting against it. And it's like they sometimes like the older generation like uses like not the N-word in specific, but like there's different words like in Swahili and stuff that like are like made to like dehumanize like black people, like true like people from like the different like tribes of Maasai and everything. Like there's like so much like the Arabs and like the mixed people like use against those people. And it's like, what are you fighting? Like, what is like? It's all from colonization, and like it's so much deeper than anything we can talk about. But like, it's just funny to see the younger generation versus the older generation, and like that kind of clash. I don't know, but yeah.
Before we continue, 2 points I want to get at from what you just said. And 2 words ring true: disassociation with oneself and one's environment. And the second thing is almost the difference between embracing a certain aspect of one's culture and almost I guess assimilating into the other culture. So to give context, and I want to bring this back around to what we're talking about so that it can still be in the same line that we're in. For those who have your hands up, I won't be too long, but I just want to get to this point. So the kind of we're talking about disassociation, right? There's kind of a sense of in the past, especially for the people that we come from, um, there was almost an attitude of if we do not act in this way, society will never take to us, right? And it's a survival tactic. The same way changing the connotation of the N word is a survival tactic, right? So just keep note of that. And also, the older generation tended to kind of rem- the reason why a lot of these conversations weren't had is because the platform was not always there, right? The ability for us to even congregate like this and speak in this way would have been treason. I have family members that got locked up for doing things like this, just in a different way, right? Um, and that it's that ability to communicate with each other, especially through media and social media, as people of different colors and races. It's something that it's a tool that we need to take advantage of, because you know that is something that will allow us to really have those uncomfortable conversations about what it means to be a black person, what it means to be a white person, what it means to be an Asian person. And also, when we're asking questions like, can we be racist, and can does racism exist outside of just black and white? Well, it really just begins with things like, examples like what Gamar's talking about, how in Tanzania, these are all people that are not white, by the way, but there's still that friction. And the term divide and conquer, it's like it's so real, because like if you look at all these different divisions, these different splits in society, like it rings true wherever you go. And to ignore it is almost, it's not foolish per se, because for some people that's trauma, it's traumatic to even bring these things up. But it's almost like it doesn't make sense for us who know that there could be something better to be silent on the matter and silence each other. That also goes into like cancel culture, but that's a whole nother video that we can talk about. But yeah, Carly, you've had your hand up for a while, so I'm gonna let you take the floor. Where are you supposed to transition?
Okay. Okay. So I think when people have like, I don't know what the word would be. I think it's like a self-hatred thing, when people are racist towards their own race, in the same way that people can be, like homophobic, even though they themselves are gay. It's like a self-hatred thing. They hate who they are. And I think like going back to DeAndre's point, I see that occasionally in light skins, especially like a lot of people for some reason hate the black half of them. I don't want to say for some reason, obviously it's like a societal thing, but yeah. And then like the blackness thing too, I get that. Like I've heard it before, just like walking around, I don't know, because me and Takunda used to go to Starbucks, right? And she used to get comments when we do stuff like that, because like Takunda acts white, I don't know, but like we used to get comments like that, like, oh, you're not black, you go to Starbucks, ha ha ha. Like,
You're live, right?
yeah, I know I'm live. What's up? It's true though, it's true.
Okay. All right, just to let you know.
Okay, well, like, whoever's watching is watching. What's up? Okay, but yeah, fuck, where else is gonna go with this? The N word. There's a lot of gray area with that, you know, like, and it gets hard being a white person talking about the N word because I want to discuss it and I want to get more into it, but also like I don't want to offend anyone. And I had to do it a lot when like working on the protests too, because I wanted to get into it and, you know, like do all this stuff. But I'm like, how do I do that and show support without going too far and coming off as racist to certain people, or like I'm trying too hard, or like white guilt. And I think that's something that we need to talk about more with racism too, is like when there is a lot of pressure on white people, especially around you know, like when the Black Lives Matter protests were coming on, there's a lot of pressure on white people to denounce racism and say that they weren't racist, advocate for you know, like acceptance of different cultures and stuff. It gets really hard just like being a white person and figuring out how to do that when there's so much pressure on you. And then like people, because it is a really emotional thing to talk about, people get in their feelings and then it kind of like blows up and people react quickly and it's like a huge thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to say something real quick, but like,
Go for it, bro.
I completely agree with what you said, that because a lot of Black people, we say, white people, this is also your problem to fix. But then as soon as somebody says something wrong, then there's this whole cancel culture thing just comes in waves. And it's just like, how do you expect people to learn if they can't feel like they're speaking their mind? If somebody's ignorant and they're afraid of their ignorance and they're not speaking on their ignorance, like they're not vocal about their ignorance, how is anybody supposed to know that they're even ignorant in the first place? And how are you supposed to know who to educate and how to educate them? You know what I mean?
Right.
And also, you said something about biracial people hating their Black identity, and I see that a lot too. I'm biracial myself, but I have a Black dad who really pushed that idea of not even like pro Blackness and anti everything else, just like be proud of who you are and just like know your skin and what you have as a Black person is beautiful. But I see that self-hatred in a lot of mixed kids raised by white parents or their Black parents or that parent of another race was either negative to them or not around, you know? So all they have is that white mindset to go off of, and they kind of have this shadow following them of negativity, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Okay. So before we continue with that, there's a couple people that have not spoken yet, and I want to just give y'all a chance to speak on this. So right here we got Christine and Simba. I think y'all just join or what's up? What's good with y'all?
Yeah, Chrissy sent me the link to this. I was planning on joining, but you know.
Hey, you in here, bro? Welcome to the fam.
Hey,
All right. So yeah, do you guys have any thoughts on either one of you? Do you guys have any thoughts on what's being like spoken on right now, or anything you'd like to add?
Well, just brought up some really good points about like how it's like with like sorry I'm stumbling, but you get what I mean. Like that's all. Like he brought some really good points that I like to retain in there because I wasn't even thinking of it that way. Like, you know.
Sure.
Sure.
Christine, you got anything to add on that?
I think we're on the topic of colorism a little bit, which is what I wanted to touch on too. How like some people said that they were more like biracial, but they wanted to be like more white, and I think that like stems back from like slavery times too, where like if you were lighter skinned, you'd be like a house slave instead of like a field slave. And it's like also touches in with like the N word. If being like the N word is a bad thing. So it's like the more you are closer to being white, the more you are accepted into society as like a normal human, I guess. So I feel like the self-hatred it stems from slavery, whereas the closer you are to being white is like the closer you are to being like a better human. So it's like now in this generation, colorism within like the Black community is like, oh, if you're lighter skin, you're more accepted, and if you're darker skin, it's like a bad thing, which I don't understand because we're all Black at the end of the day. But it's like we don't talk about that within the Black community on colorism. So yeah.
Sure. All right. So I just pinned you just now. I'm trying to unpin your screen. Just because there was like a I guess something was distracting your noise, so I'm just trying to figure out how to put this back. But yeah, we got two hands right now. Wait, hold up. I think I can. There we go. We good. All right, bet. So we got two hands right now. We're gonna start with DeAndre because we trying to get your voice in, brother. So let's do it.
Yeah, I wanted to bring it back to the whole little the biracial thing about the self hate and all that. So like I'm biracial myself. So, and this is something me and you have talked about a lot, like plenty of times. And like I've noticed the whole thing with like the biracial and light skinned people like not liking a certain side of their family. And I can honestly like I can feel it and kind of resonate with the idea because even though I don't hate my black side, it's not like that or nothing, but I can resonate with the idea because like growing up, my family always gave me the idea of, they always told me like, you're not black, like you're mixed, you're white. And it's because I grew up with my white side of the family. My mom raised me. So I always had this idea. It's like, man, I'll never be black. Like I can't accept my blackness. No one's accepting that shit. And like, that's just the only reason I can kind of, I wouldn't say like I agree with the idea, but like I can kind of resonate with the idea of not liking the blackness because like I said before, there's every group like race has their own like this amount of self-hate that we have for each other and a certain like these aspects of different like kinds of blackness, if you understand what I'm saying. I'm kind of stumbling, but yeah, I just kind of wanted to put that out there, like the idea of like black people telling each other like, oh, you're not black enough, and stripping the blackness away when everybody, it's just melanin, we all the same. You know what I mean?
Facts.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak on that.
Yeah. All right, so we got Gamar who got her hand up right now. So let's see what she's talking about.
Kind of like goes with being like the idea of being mixed kind of ties in with like racial ambiguity and like somebody who like for people who are racially ambiguous, like nobody knows like what you are, nobody can pinpoint it. Like that just goes to show like how much of like how much race is just like a structure, and like not to say like okay like don't look at race at all. Like obviously it's a thing now, it's been a thing, and it's something like we have to like consider, and we have to tear apart and dissect and diminish hopefully in the future, far in the future. But like sometimes like I was watching this YouTube video. It was by Jubilee. It's actually a cool video. You guys should watch it. It was do all racially ambiguous people think alike? And it was like there was like a bunch of like different mixes, and like there was like Indian and black, Asian and white, like East Asian and white. There's like so many mixes, and like hearing the stories of like how they're like being torn like side to side from like the one side to the other side. Like, am I black? Am I this? I'm like I'm neither because nobody sees this. Like it's just like an identity crisis, and it just shows like how everything goes all ways. Like the racism goes all ways, and it's just so sad because like it's just the things that need attention aren't getting attention because like the big picture is like it's always on like America, and like that of course is a huge issue, and it needs the attention that it has, but like it's so much deeper than that, you know. So I don't know, I just think like with like the whole like being mixed, being half white half black, there's also being racially ambiguous, and like that like even adds to it, and like you're not the right mix, and like this mix is like tearing you down, and this mix is tearing you down, like this side of your family, and it's just a toxic vicious cycle.
So if we're gonna actually before we begin, I keep hearing like some headphones. I don't know whose they are. Does anyone know whose that is? It's gone now. Jeez. All right, bet we'll continue. But yeah, from just drawing from a lot of the points. So we actually, you know what? I'll hold that thought. I'll come back to it at the end because I feel like that's a closing thing. So let's have who's had their hand longer, Devin or Carly? All right, Devin, let you get it.
I was just gonna say I really like the one point that D said, like kind of at the end of what he was talking about, especially, and he just kind of said about how melanin is melanin, you know, like we're all the same. And I just wanted to bring attention to the point that like racism is nothing more than a social construct. Racism wouldn't be here if we didn't choose to divide. It's not anymore one race dividing over another or dividing just between races. Like we've already discussed about how races divide within each other. And I think it's just important to recognize that like none of this would be in existence if we just viewed each other as the same. Like we are really all the same. I brought this up in our little live that we did together, but like we are not any more related to people our own color than we are of people another color. I am just as much related to all of you guys as you guys are all related to each other and to me. We are still all the exact same. And we vary very much. Like in this group here, we have a lot of different colors and ethnicities all coming together as one. But at the end of the day, we are one, you know? And I think that that's just something that people like to think, like they like to organize in groups. We have this fear of like uncertainty and like not having everything perfectly put together in pieces. So we divide ourselves and we put ourselves into these groups. And like we place these norms and values that we would like that we should hold within these groups. But I think that's such an unreasonable way to think within a society. Like, how can a black person act black and a white person act black? Or a black person act white and a white person act black? How can you act a culture? How can you act a color? At the end of the day, we are all one. And it doesn't matter what color our skin is or where our background is because we're still the same. And I feel like that's something that people really don't have a deep understanding of. Like I know a lot of us here definitely do, but there's so much ignorance in the world about the fact that culture and like the diversity and complexion that exists within humankind is something to be celebrated, not something to create divide and all of this like fight and hatred and war between.
Right. Um, yeah, I think that's a very important point to also keep note of. You know, we at the end of the day, we all come from the same source. You know, we're all human beings. I think I read somewhere that people of all races we share like 99% of our DNA, and there's like a 1% variation. If I'm not mistaken, that's a lot. You know what I mean? So we should also remember that that the person that you're talking to, that's your brother, that's your sister, regardless of what color they have in their skin, regardless of what color they have in their eyes, regardless of what color they have in their hair. We're all beautiful in our own ways, and we should all embrace each other for our differences. So I see Carly's hand is up right now, so I'll give it a chance to talk her piece.
Yo. Okay. So going back to Gamar's point, this just like it made me think of this, but not everyone in the same race acts the same way. And people a lot of the time forget that, like what might be racist to one person is acceptable to another. What might be cultural appropriation to one person is acceptable to another. And like this is where it gets muddy because there is no black and white definition of like what's racist, what isn't, who's doing the right thing, who isn't, because everyone has their own opinion and everyone believes what they're doing is right. No matter like where you stand, how bad of a person you are, you're going to think what you're doing is right. You're going to always think you're the right way. So like it gets really hard to talk about it in that sense. And like going on Devin's point to the white man's burden in Europe. I did a lot of like history stuff for one of my courses this year, but like this whole idea of white being better all came up with the white man's burden. And for those of you who don't know what that is, basically white people in Europe believed it was their responsibility to go to like these other poor places and educate these people, these savages. That was like the whole thing, was picking up the white man's burden. People thought it was their responsibility to educate people. And like going back to that, that's why it spread so far. Because it wasn't just like, oh, these people suck, whatever, we're going to take over their lands. People literally thought it was their job and they were doing the right thing. So, yeah.
What's crazy though is that a lot of these Eastern European countries like England, Germany, France, they even Spain, they had this colonization mindset, and that everyone around them was savages. But the Greek, who learned from actual Africans, described them as savages from time, like from way before that. So it's kind of, I feel like they actually adopted that from the Greek, because when the Africans taught Greeks how to build, like when you see all these big magnificent structures, that's all from African geometry, that's all from African math. You know what I mean? Like we taught them. We're really the original scientific and mathematic pioneers. But when the Greek went and taught those Eastern European countries, then they were like, we have these religions, we have these ideals, and we're perfect and we're superior. Now let's go spread it. But they did it by force, and obviously now here we are today. But nobody's really benefiting from that. And a lot of what I've seen is that once they colonize these countries, well, these places that they turn into countries, they basically just pack and leave. Like, yeah, we've done our job, and then let's just wipe our hands of them. And then it leaves generations to come of traumatized and damaged and hurting individuals, and nobody to fix it, because the people who were there to teach us have already left, so we don't know what to learn. And I see this in Jamaica. A perfect example is homophobia. When white people brought Africans to Jamaica, it was a whole different form of Christianity. Homophobia was running rampant. Colorism was running rampant. And then the Europeans leave Jamaica and go back to England or go back to Ireland or go to North America or whatever. And now they start to progress. They start to become less ignorant. But now a lot of Jamaicans are still trapped in that ignorance because that's all we've known, and nobody has brought us out of that. So I feel like that's a lot of people whose ancestors were colonizers. It's somewhat your responsibility to educate. I wouldn't even say educate, but just like take action, you know, because what your ancestors have done, not even my ancestors, my cousins and family members are still suffering from today.
So okay, cover a couple points that were made. We went from talking about there's two perspectives that are shining through right now. So there's the perspective of the ills of colonization, of slavery, the ills of racism, really, and the effects it's had on minority groups all around the world, right? We're also talking about Carly used the reference to the white man's burden, right? But I see that in two different ways. So one was self-imposed, but now there's one that has come back. The first one, as Carly said, was kind of the sense of, oh, we are people of knowledge, so we must spread this knowledge to the world, and we are superior and we have the superior way of life, right? But now there's a new burden that has been brought because Black people are now, in reality, we're being afforded way more rights than our ancestors had, right? But the main burden is understanding what we are feeling. And there's two groups of people in the white community, and if I'm wrong about anything, hey, let me know. This is what this is about. But from what I've noticed, there's two groups. There's a group of people that genuinely just really want to understand what's going on and try to put themselves in our shoes and try to understand their experience and really try to pinpoint what can be done to make things better, right? Then there's another group that have kind of given up on that and just like, I'm not trying to hear about this. I don't know anything about that. This has nothing to do with me, right? And you know what? None of those people are wrong. If you really think about it, none of them are actually wrong, because that's an interpretation. When you're given a stimulus, everybody has, if you're given a stimulus, everybody has a different reaction to that stimulus, right? But it's important to understand truth above anything. it's important to understand that with every perspective, even though there may not be a wrong, there may be a flaw, right? And the flaw in this situation comes both ways, and it's not even just on white people. It comes with all of us because it actually affects the way we interact with each other. And again, this will be my final point. Then we're gonna kind of give the floor out for final thoughts. Just because time's ticking. Unless y'all want to go overtime, this is what we finna do. But it's important to understand that like white people have been given this great responsibility to clean up the mess. When in reality, to clean up the mess, we have to communicate with each and every one of ourselves. We have to make sure we create a platform where we can really tell our honest truths and actually act on them instead of, cowering and being shy, and not even being shy, just cowering and hiding from what is in front of us. It's important to really address. I'll give you guys time to chime in, but I feel like for a long time, we've never met in the middle. There's never been a compromise made. There's never been a point where we're just like, oh, this is where you're coming from. Oh, this is where I'm coming from. All right, let's meet the ends. These are things that we learn even in kindergarten. You got kids, they want to play with the same toy, right? But they each want the same toy. But what do you do to allow both of them to have that chance? All right, you have this toy for this time, and then you share and you have it for this time. Very simple concept, but it's for some reason, when we take that up into adolescence, even into adulthood, we don't apply the same principle. All right, so it's now let's take that up and be like, okay, so let's go to the N word right now. I have a black friend. My black friend, he may use the N word sometimes with his other black friends, right? But I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable saying it around him because it offends him, right? Even though I don't fully understand why. Now it is my responsibility as a black friend to explain, all right, this is actually what happened. This is the reasoning. This is exactly why I find this disrespectful. And you reach common ground. And I'm not gonna say nobody can do anything. I'm not God. I'm not about to impose some kind of law on you. You know what I mean? Everything's anecdotal. Everybody does what they want to. But it's important to understand that we need to meet in the middle. And this is why conversations like this are important. So yeah, I'm gonna let Christine, Carly, Ashley, Gamar, and how many hands do we have up? And Devin to end your points. Yeah, let's do it. Boom.
I think the whole concept of meeting in the middle has to start from groups inside. So I feel like everybody in the Black community needs to get together and unite before we can move past certain stages, because I know a lot of Black females and males that wouldn't want to do that. But like I said, the issues of Black people as a whole, I'm saying it like this. There's different types of Black people. There's African Americans, there's Africans, there's Afro Caribbeans, and then there's biracials that are Black and then something else. Most of those groups don't even like each other in the first place because of other reasons and stereotypes that the white man has put on all of us together. So I feel like even though we all don't stem from the same cultural beliefs and we don't all have the same unique features, we're all still Black at the end of the day. And people that aren't Black just look at us as Black, when inside our community we look at each other from certain groups instead of just Black people as a whole. So in order to end racism or systemic oppression, as Black people, we all need to come together before we move on to a next race and educate them. And I feel like as Black people, we also need to create a safe space for white people to ask us questions if they want to learn about Black history, instead of us getting offended right away, because some people actually don't know what can offend Black people and what cannot. So it's if we create a safe space for Black people together as a community, and then for other groups to come in and ask questions, there can be some civilization in this world when it comes to race.
And I think that's also very important note right there. Thank you for that. Carly, any additional notes on that?
Yeah. So kind of starting off, like I have racist family, right? It's not something I'm proud of, but half the time it just comes down to, like uneducation or misinformation about a topic. So if there isn't like a safe space where people think they can go to be educated, or if people like, if they don't feel comfortable asking questions about something, they're not going to ask. They're just going to keep doing what they do. And at the end of the day, too, like the N word for me, it just comes down to courtesy, Like, there's no point arguing about it. If Black people don't want it said by white people, what's the big deal, Like, just respect it. That's all it's about. And that's the whole thing with racism. Like, just, it's respect. Like, respect for another person. That's it.
Thanks, Carly. All right, Ashley.
No. I just want to say something like 2 seconds, but like me and Isaiah have said this and we've touched up on this a lot and we've reiterated it. But when it comes to a culture and ideology, you don't have to understand it, but everybody asks that you gotta respect it. So I agree with that for sure.
Appreciate it, bro. All right, Ashley, any final thoughts?
Yeah, and just to stem off of like what you guys were just talking about, it's just the importance of communicating and like doing things like we're doing right now and talking about these topics that people don't feel comfortable talking about and interacting with each other, and especially and like what Christine said, starting within our own communities and understanding to people from other communities that a lot of the time it's ignorance too, right? That plays a factor, and they're not aware of, for an example, like a young child who isn't Black saying the N-word or something. It's ignorance because they don't teach these things in school. So it's important to bring awareness to these topics and talk about it, because some people are scared to talk about it, or it's just like uncomfortable. But there's no way we're going to come together and understand each other without talking about that uncomfortable and feeling it. That's all.
All right. And Devin, any final thoughts?
I just wanted to say, I feel like I know Christine and Ashley made some good points about, like the side of like what Black people, like what their thoughts are about what Black people should do to, unite as one within their own culture, and like as a society of Black people. But then on the contrary, for white people, we need to come together as white people and recognize the fact that we have messed up. We as a color, like I have that label attached to me, like my color, my ancestors way down the line have made a huge mistake. And I feel like as white people, we need to recognize, but not only recognize what we've done wrong, but we need to actually change, like evoke change. I mean, for me, like I'm very willing to learn. I'm very willing to be told, you know what, like I don't think you should do this, or I don't think you should say this. But not everybody's like that. Like I want to learn. I want to learn how to respect everybody. Like you guys are all brothers and sisters to me. Everybody of every color, we're all brothers and sisters. And that's how I view it. But I know for a fact not every white person is like that. I know that white supremacy is still a thing. I know that the white guy habitus is still present in the classrooms and in many teaching institutions in society. And that's where the white dominant male is the one who's the biggest influencer. You see that in the media. I mean, you still see it all around the world. I mean, the States has their first Black Asian vice president, which is great. But at the same time, we have so much room for improvement as white people in general. We need to stop moving like toward that stigma against Black people and any kind of person of color. We need to understand the fact that we are people. We are all human. It doesn't matter what color our skin is. We need to actually rise up against these bad things that we have done in the past and move along. Like start treating Black people with the same respect that you would treat somebody with your own color. Treat people with your own color with the same respect that you would treat with Black people. Like I don't see why respect depends on race, or why respect depends on the person. Like people are people. Treat each other as we are. That is it. It doesn't matter what your color of your skin is. And I feel like that's just so important. Like I also have racist people in my family, unfortunately. And when you see their views, it's like they think they can't be wrong. It's like they think they do have that dominance or that power. And it's like, I can't even look at one of my Black friends and think that they're lesser than, or that I'm somehow above them, or that we aren't equal. Because I know for a fact that everybody around me is equal to me, because I am no better or no worse than the person next to me or the person I'm faced up against. Because at the end of the day, we are people and we are all human together, and there shouldn't be that division. So I guess, like, I always say human is human and we all bleed the same blood. And that I would just hope that because I love people, people would love me, and that we would all love each other. And I feel like that's just the way it should be. There shouldn't be division. There shouldn't be greed. There shouldn't be all of these different, like, underlying issues that are dividing us. Because what are we being divided for? Realistically. Like, what is this divide for? What kind of power do we need? What kind of power do white people need to obtain over other people? Why? I just don't understand why that still seems to be an issue in society, and why we can't recognize as people that we are one.
All right. Thanks, Devin. Gamar, any final thoughts?
A bunch, but I'll try to be concise. But just wait, off of the last thing she said, I think the world, everybody in the world, or not everybody in the world, but the bad in the world, it's like a chase for power. And whether power is money or like what you own or whatever it is, it's usually money. But even when you just look at like where, like, what Black comes from, when you look at Africa, like, it's so sad to me because, like, there's so much richness in that country, but the people who are reaping the benefits are not Black Africans. Like, it's whatever other people are there, and like white people are profiting off of Black land and Black African, like, it's just, there's so much treasure there. There's so much things there that are, and then you look at the country and you look at these villages and like, they're just like, you know, and that's why things aren't going any. Nothing can change because of the chase for power. And like, if that power is given back to Black people, if that power is given back to Middle Eastern people, if that power is given back to South Asians, whoever, whatever that isn't white, then like that all goes into shambles. Like, all that power is lost. And then, yeah, so that's my point off of what she just said. And I just wanted to bring it back to my first point, that like, about like whether Black people can be racist or not. And like what I said, like, every race is racist. And if you want proof about that, you just hit the comments for 6 Buzz, Toronto News, any of those accounts. Like, the comment sections just like really, that just shows you where we're at as a society. And like, that in itself is back to my point about being like the bullies and the bullied. Like, it's just like a reflection or a reaction to like years of trauma. And that doesn't make it right, but it's a different type of racism. But yeah, that's all.
Thank you for that. DeAndre, any final thoughts? And
Nah, I ain't got no final thoughts, to be honest. Everybody's striking the head on the nail.
That's what we like to hear. All right, Jamar, any final thoughts, bro?
Nah, not really, yo. All I gotta say, this was a good dive. You know? Yeah.
Thanks, bro. All right, I see. Wait, does Mo still have his hand up? Yeah. Mo, you got a final thought on that, bro?
Who, me? What's that?
You got a final thought?
Yeah. I heard, I don't remember who said it, but I heard that a step towards equality, not even equality, but treating Black people with fucking basic human respect, like, it's not that hard, but is the education system. And I feel like education systems really need to restructure how they teach white kids or non-Black kids about Black history and Black empowerment. I feel like it needs to be focused on Black empowerment and not imposing white guilt, because teaching slavery is one thing, yes, but at the same time, it's also teaching kids that, like, yo, you should feel bad for Black people, and that kind of automatically creates a superiority complex, because usually if you're feeling bad for somebody, that's because they're in a lower spot than you. You know what I mean? So I feel like that kind of ingrains in a non-black kid's head that like, oh, I have to save them or whatever because they're lesser than me, or they just don't care because why should they? You know? So I feel like they should teach about black empowerment if they want white kids to respect non-black kids. Because would you think about it? Would you rather respect somebody who is empowered, who knows who they are, who is proud about who they are, which there are thousands of examples in black history and black history, not even black history, just black culture currently today? Or do you expect yourself to respect somebody who is cowardly or less than? You know what I mean?
Actually, yeah, no.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point to end on. So yeah, I just want to begin by saying thank you to everybody who just came in today. Um it means a lot to really get this kind of discussion started as, as a group. Um it's a difficult topic, to ask questions like this, as far as the society goes. Right now we're just scratching the surface. Um I just want to end on with this. No matter what you come from, no matter who you are, no matter what you believe, there's few things that ring true. The person next to you is your neighbor. The person that you go to you know, for inspiration will mold the way you think in the future, right? And the people that we may not even pay attention to, they also hold a lot of influence in the environment that we stay in, no matter how much you want to deny that or not. So if you understand those factors and understand that every individual lives under those factors, you understand that you know perspective is everything. It's everything for people to understand that we all exist as products of our environment. We all exist as products of the lessons we've learned and things that have hurt us, and not just the things that have hurt us, but the things that have also given us a sense of reward. I think, as people in general, as human beings, we've in many ways we failed in the past to acknowledge that one's experience brings true for a lot. I mean, not just rings true, my bad. A person's experience does a lot to the way they interact with their world. And it's important to understand that, regardless of what you look like, you know, that could mean something different for everybody. So it's important to put yourself in other people's shoes before you cast judgment, and to make sure that you have a solid grasp of, what's around you. I don't want to ramble on too much, but you know, this month is Black History Month. Despite what, some people may feel about it, or some people, you know, I'm not about to get into all that. That's something for another video. But this is not just a month to celebrate Black accomplishments and Black empowerment, but it's also an opportunity to embrace, people that have gone through mass adversity and brought us to the place where we are today to have conversations like this. And I feel like this is, in one way, a form of doing justice to the things that happened before. Um, yeah, I don't want to. I really don't want to miss a point, but it's bound to happen. But I feel like we have a really good group over here, and y'all really did your thing to really address a lot of the differences and discrepancies as far as the topic at hand. So yeah, to the viewers over here, this is the Paradox 12 podcast, and thank you for viewing what we're putting on. And yeah, God bless. And yeah, this is it. And this is where I hit cut. All right, so guys, it's done recording.